Next month, my sister will start living with us. Can you give up your room? He left the door ajar and said to me inside. When my husband said that, all I could do was stare back at him in astonishment. Because the door was only half open, Ken seemed unaware that his sister, Susan, was in the room. At that moment, Susan and I exchanged glances, her face expressing unexpected surprise, clearly indicating she had not been informed of this plan by my husband. Struggling to muster some strength, I addressed Susan, who was about to say something, with an encouraging "it's no problem," and then declared my resolution to my husband. "I understand. I'll contact the moving company to arrange the move." "What?" my husband exclaimed in surprise, but I continued. "I'm filing for a divorce. You understand why, right?" I said, presenting the screen of my smartphone to him. At that moment, his color changed and he turned pale. A new battle was about to begin. "My name is Lisa. The year I turned 26, I unexpectedly ran into Susan, whom I looked up to during my university years, on the street. Upon meeting her, she introduced me to her younger brother, Ken. That was when me and Ken met. Susan was, thanks to her warm personality, beloved by many, especially her juniors. She always listened to our questions and went out of her way to teach us whenever we didn't understand something. We hit it off and developed a particularly close relationship. She often reached out to me. Even after graduating from university, we continued to stay in touch. We exchanged messages and even sent letters to each other, joyfully sharing updates about our lives. Since Ken was the same age as me, Susan arranged for us to have tea together. When Ken learned we were the same age, he suggested, "You don't have to call me little brother. Since we're the same age, just call me Ken." After that, I started calling him Ken. He called Melissa, and thanks to Susan, we had a delightful tea time. Later, when Susan asked me about my impression of Ken, I replied, "He's a nice person, just like I had imagined." She responded, "It seems like a tough journey ahead, but I'm glad you think of him favorably." At the time, I didn't grasp the meaning of Susan's comment, but it turned out that Ken was interested in me and had consulted with Susan about wanting to meet again. Hearing this, Susan went out of her way to call me to see if something was going on between us. Later, Ken, Susan, and I had another meal together, during which Susan had to step away temporarily due to a sudden call from her workplace. That's when Ken proposed to me, saying, "I've been interested in you. Would you consider going out with me? Even if it's just as a trial?" I didn't have special feelings for Ken at that time, but I agreed to date him, not wanting to hurt his feelings and feeling it would be unfair to Susan. Days passed, and during a date without Susan, I surprisingly found myself enjoying Ken's company and the date. This might actually be good. I began to think, and it seemed my feelings were conveyed to Ken as well. Susan warmly watched over us as we got along well, and both Ken's parents and mine supported our relationship. After 2 years of dating, we decided to get married. Both families expressed their joy as if they had been waiting for this moment, and we blushed with bashful smiles. It wasn't until the exchange of business cards between Ken's father and my father when they met that I first learned Susan and Ken were actually the daughter and son of a CEO. Susan, with an apologetic demeanor, explained, "My father always told me not to disclose this matter. That's why I couldn't talk about it until now." Understanding it was probably a measure to ward off those targeting their wealth, I conveyed that it didn't bother me at all. Learning that Susan and Ken were considered future CEO candidates in their father's company, I was only able to express my surprise. "Oh, I see." Despite knowing Susan and Ken's potential future roles, my attitude towards them didn't change. My in-laws, very pleased with my attitude, offered to cover the entire cost of our wedding. When I shared that I intended to pay with my own funds, my parents revealed, "You see, we've actually been saving up for your wedding." Eventually, both our parents decided to cover the wedding expenses. With blessings for our marriage from both sides, I vowed that I would repay their kindness. After getting married, I actively sought to deepen our relationships by regularly communicating with my in-laws and my own parents, and sending gifts. I felt we had a great relationship. The interaction between our families increased as all four parents went on a hot spring trip together. However, 3 years into our marriage, I started noticing changes in Ken's behavior. Initially, it was just a slight sense of discomfort. Despite Ken's workplace supposedly having less overtime, he spent most of the week working late and often came home smelling of alcohol. Perhaps he was just drinking alone at a bar after work. I knew that his job was demanding, especially since he was expected to be the next CEO. I wanted to support him as much as possible. Still, the ongoing overtime was concerning. One day, worried, I directly asked him about his situation. "Are you okay? You've been doing a lot of overtime lately. Aren't you feeling tired?" Concerned about his daily fatigue and attempting to have a conversation with him, he reacted with obvious irritation. "I can take care of myself. I want to be free from work stress at home. Please don't bring up overtime," he said, and with those words, he turned on the TV, ending our conversation there. I noticed that his attitude had become particularly cold recently. It might be the exhaustion from work. Hoping to help him regain his energy, I tried to alleviate his fatigue with hot baths and made his favorite dishes for lunch. However, one day, when I came home and went to wash his used lunchbox, I noticed that the usual dividers and small cups were missing. While I was happy that he was eating his lunch, the disappearance of the dividers and cups was certainly not normal. Faced with this situation, I got worried. A terrible thought crossed my mind. Could it be that he's throwing away the lunches I made with love? If he threw away the lunch, it would make sense that the dividers and cups would also be discarded, hence why they were missing. That day, I was enveloped in deep sadness as I looked at the empty lunchbox. The thought that the lunches I made might have been thrown away made my heart ache, and tears started to flow. I had doubts in my heart, wondering, is he throwing away the lunches I made? Yet, I didn't have the courage to confront him directly with this question. Instead, I casually asked, "Do you mind if I stop making lunches for you?" He appeared momentarily puzzled, but then, after some thought, replied, "That might be better. What one wants to eat can change daily, and it must be hard for you to make lunch every day. You don't need to make it from tomorrow on." It seemed as if he was saying he didn't need the lunch out of consideration for me, but the thought that my homemade lunches were unnecessary for him pained my heart. The next day, while I was working in my room, I heard Ken, not knowing he returned home already, talking on the phone in the next room with the window open, and his voice inadvertently reached me. "Well, my wife asked me if it's okay not to make lunches from tomorrow on." I wondered what she was thinking, considering she's the one being supported by me. I kind of pondered what she had provided since we got married, but it was troublesome to carry around garbage, so I pretended to be considerate and told her it's okay not to make lunches anymore. Hearing his words hurt me and enveloped me in sadness. In that moment, my hand moved unconsciously, activating the recording app on my smartphone. Listening to the recording later, I realized Ken had been speaking quite loudly on the phone, and his words were clearly captured. I had no idea how to handle the situation. At that time, I decided to consult with Susan, who had always been a strong presence in my life. When I mentioned that I wanted to talk about something, she made time on her next day off, and we went to a cafe with private cabins together. It was comforting to know that even if I started crying, I won't have to worry about others around me. When I began to earnestly talk about wanting to know how Ken behaves at work, Susan listened intently with a serious expression. Upon hearing Ken's recorded voice, she was outraged, saying, "That's unacceptable. Treating the lunches you painstakingly made as trash. Complaining about lunches made for him. And what does he mean by what she has provided? You have been doing all the household chores, right?" I could only nod in silence. We both work, but since getting married, I naturally took on all the household duties. I was under the impression that his work was more demanding than mine. That's why I never asked him to help with chores at home, thinking his position as a future CEO candidate was challenging enough and wanting him to have some peace and quiet at home. But to think that my efforts were taken for granted and even perceived as nothing. I can't understand why Ken suddenly started saying such things. Maybe something happened at work. His overtime has increased lately. What? Our company is currently aiming to eliminate overtime, so there's no way Ken is working late. What? I was shocked to learn that he was lying. What on earth was going on with him? As I truly enjoyed our time together and felt deeply for him, knowing about his betrayal made tears stream down my face uncontrollably. Susan gently placed her hand on my shoulder and said, "Don't worry. I'll look into Ken's situation. It's okay for you to go back to your parents' house for a while. Discuss it with your father and mother. We'll say that you are going on a trip with your mom to keep things under wraps. Thank you. I leave it to you." Feeling the difficulty of continuing to live with Ken under these circumstances, I was truly grateful for Susan's suggestion. Later, Susan shared what I had told her with my in-laws and also shared the audio data I provided. They promised to do their utmost to investigate Ken's actions. Having allies other than Ken was incredibly reassuring for me, a testament to the good relationships we've built over time. And within just a week, Susan and my in-laws came to visit my parents' house. As soon as they entered the living room and said, "We are terribly sorry," my whole family, including myself, were taken aback. We quickly asked them to sit down on the sofa, served tea, and then began to inquire about what had happened. The truth is, I am very sorry to say, but our son seems to be having an affair. The father-in-law started to explain with a sense of unease. Having been quietly reflecting at my parents' home, I had suspected that Ken might be having an affair, so it wasn't entirely unexpected. However, faced with the reality of one spouse being unfaithful was an immeasurable blow. At that moment, I felt all the strength drain from my body, and my mother gently supported my shoulder, seeing my distress. It appears that during Ken's absence, my in-laws and Susan discreetly investigated his actions at work, checking security footage, and uncovered his affair with a new female employee. Due to Susan being in a different department and Ken's position as the CEO's son, no one felt able to speak up, which led to this situation. The new employee was informed by her colleagues that Ken was married, yet she responded with indifference, continuing the relationship despite knowing he was married. During lunch breaks, Ken was seen in the relaxation area with the new employee, sharing the lunch she brought. This seems to be the reason as to why he no longer needed the lunches you made, resulting in him discarding them. In fact, there were witnesses who saw the new employee empty the lunchbox contents into a trash can. It was unbelievable that something like this had been going on at the company, and that people knew yet remained silent. Did the president's son and his affair partner have that much influence within the company? The father-in-law, deeply pained by the situation, expressed, "I cannot believe such things were happening in our company. I am really sorry. I feel remorseful not just for my son's actions but also for my position as the leader of the organization." He then made it clear, "There is one thing this incident has made evident. He is not fit to take over our business. It's secondary whether he has the business acumen or not. A person who strays from the right path cannot be entrusted with our company." Hearing this, I felt a sense of relief. I had sensed that Ken's current arrogance was due to his awareness of being a future CEO candidate. If he loses his position as a potential CEO, I thought he might become more humble. Even if we might have been able to repair our relationship and return to normal, it was impossible for me to continue living under the same roof with him. I made up my mind to divorce him. The first thing to do was to go back home and have a serious conversation with Ken. Susan insisted on coming with me, saying, "I'm worried about you being alone." "Oh, right? We should call the moving company in advance." "Father, please take care of that." "All right, I'll handle it." My father-in-law replied, and I asked him to arrange various things before heading home with Susan. While Ken was not home yet, I started packing my belongings in my room. Then, it seemed Ken had returned home and was approaching my room with loud footsteps. "Next month, my sister will start living with us. Can you give up your room?" He said this with the door half open, not realizing that Susan was in the room with me. At that moment, Susan and I exchanged glances. her face expressing unexpected surprise, clearly indicating she had not been informed of this plan by my husband. We suspected that he might be using the excuse of living with Susan to actually create a hideaway for his affair inside our home. Feeling outraged that Susan's name was being used for such a despicable scheme, I gathered my strength and responded to my husband. I understand. I'll contact the moving company to arrange the move. What? My husband exclaimed in surprise, but I continued. I'm filing for a divorce. You understand why, right? I said, presenting the screen of my smartphone to him. At that moment, his face turned pale, shocked by the image on the screen, a photo I received from my father-in-law showing Ken and the new female employee intimately together at the company. The extent of their reckless behavior was evident from photos taken by their colleagues and surveillance camera footage, showing how thoughtlessly they acted without regard for those around them. What are these? Where did these photos come from? And what is this moving company? My husband asked in confusion. At that moment, a lively voice from the entrance said, "Excuse us." And Ken rushed to the entrance, only to see the movers entering our home. What's going on? He tried to stop the movers, but during that moment, I handed him the divorce papers. When he turned around, my sister-in-law, who had been hiding behind me, appeared, making his face turn even paler. "Susan, just sign it quickly. Don't cause any more trouble for Lisa." "What are you talking about? Did Lisa call you here? This is my house." "Oh, the sofa and the massage chair. They're mine." While he was shouting and holding his head, my father-in-law entered, bypassing the movers. "What are you talking about? I gave all these as presents. They are not yours. You haven't done anything for Lisa on your own, yet you speak like this. Dad." Ken must not have expected his family to come together and criticize him for planning to use my room for another purpose. He probably never thought that I would seek help from anyone else because I had always been devoted to him. He might have thought that I would tolerate his infidelity and say nothing, enduring it quietly. But there were things even I couldn't tolerate. I can't build trust with someone who throws away my homemade lunches while eating another's and boldly lying. Why is everyone? In front of me stood not only my father-in-law but also my mother-in-law and my parents, all casting cold gazes at Ken. It didn't take long for Ken to realize he had no allies left. "You are no longer a part of this family." "Wow, to engage in an affair within the company? You've got nerves. You will be transferred to our overseas factory. If you dislike that, resign and start a new life somewhere far away." "But, Dad, I was supposed to be the next president. Since my sister is a woman and I am your son, shouldn't I be the most suitable for the position?" Silence. "Just because you are my son doesn't mean I can entrust you with our business. You truly underestimate corporate management. More and more, I see that someone like you is unnecessary for our company." My father-in-law's stern words completely unsettled Ken, shattering his title of future CEO candidate. As a result, he signed the divorce papers in front of me, appearing soulless, ensuring that our divorce would be finalized smoothly. While Ken was in a daze, his parents took him back to their home. In the meantime, Susan helped me organize my belongings, and I was able to return to my parents' home. The furniture moved out by the movers was stored in a rental warehouse, all high-quality items that my father-in-law offered for me to use freely when starting my new life. The next day, Ken's affair partner, unaware of anything, showed up at work and, upon learning that everything had been exposed, she shed tears. Her parents were then summoned to the president's office, where they deeply apologized for their daughter's actions. It seems her parents were planning to make their daughter work hard as a form of compensation for her actions. Meanwhile, Ken, failing to grasp the gravity of the situation, was sent off to the overseas factory, where he finally seemed to comprehend his predicament. Caught in a place where he can't escape the judgmental eyes of others, he seems to be making daily efforts to pay the alimony, despite wanting to return home. For about a month after the divorce, I was feeling depressed, but Susan invited me out and cheered me up. She even suggested, "How about we share a room together?" So now we are happily searching for a place to live together. Now that my parents will be living with us, it would be best for you, an outsider, to move into a cheaper facility. My husband, who only used me while I dreamed of happiness, ended it just like that. Betrayed by my in-laws as well, I was utterly shocked. In response, I immediately started preparing and contacted all relevant parties. Where did all the furniture and appliances go? I arranged for a company to come and take them away. What? The next day, I contacted the company to take away the furniture and appliances, and the pickup was completed. My husband was confused and couldn't hide his disturbance. My name is Michelle Smith. I am 35 years old. After graduating from college, I continued to work from home. I commute only once a month. I am employed as a regular employee, but the company has been very considerate of my situation. The reason is that both of my legs are disabled. Therefore, I use a wheelchair even for moving around indoors. This condition was caused by a motorcycle accident during my college years. I was hit from behind on the highway and thrown into the air. I remember the sensation at that time. Everything was strangely in slow motion. This might be the end, I thought calmly while I was in the air. Fortunately, my life was spared, but my legs became disabled. I am still continuing rehabilitation, but it seems unlikely that I will return to my previous condition. I have lived a life using a wheelchair for many years. Perhaps I will spend the rest of my life being single. After coming to terms with the condition of my legs, the me who once longed for marriage began to feel this way. At one time, my friends planned a mixer for me. That's where I met my current husband, Ken. He is 5 years older than me. He looks younger than his actual age. In addition, I was surprised by how youthful his actions and speech were, not seeming like someone who is 40 at all. To put it nicely, he's simple and honest. Surprisingly, he didn't mind my wheelchair at all and asked various questions without any hesitation. How do you manage meals? What about housework? Can you reach the laundry? What about work? Are you okay with using the toilet and bathing by yourself? While others were hesitant, Ken had no such reservations, and that was refreshing. I was so happy because I had never met someone I could talk to so openly. While most people would not ask about my legs, Ken did not hesitate to ask various questions. Normally, it might be considered rude, but his interest was a joy for me. He was genuinely interested in me. After several dates, we started dating. With him, I can surely be happy. At that time, only Ken was in my eyes, and I felt like I would never meet anyone else who could be by my side. Then, about half a year into our relationship, I received a proposal, and I felt extremely happy at that moment. However, the situation changed drastically shortly after we got married. We started our married life together in my single-family home. This house is a bit expensive for rent, but is a comfortable dwelling suitable for wheelchair living. Probably it's thanks to the previous tenant who modified it for barrier-free access. Ken liked this spacious house. Since I spend a lot of time at home, I took on most of the housework. Sometimes, when I was not feeling well, I would ask him for help, but he would say, "I'm tired today," and wouldn't help at all. Moreover, he refused to assist with bathing. What? No, I don't want to do that. Indeed, I can manage by myself, but it takes a considerable amount of time. When I was living alone, I used to have a helper come twice a week to assist with bathing, but on the other days, I managed by myself. Although I'm used to it, I can't help thinking it would be easier if Ken would help. It always took a long time to take a bath. I was not hiring a helper anymore because Ken said it was a waste of money. While relaxing in the bath, I suddenly thought, my arms are tired. This bathroom was originally adapted for barrier-free access. It was an important factor when choosing the property. However, when Ken takes a bath first, he doesn't put away the wash bowl, and he leaves shampoo bottles directly on the floor. It takes extra time and effort to pick them up. Can't you consider that I have to bathe by myself too? I want to take a bath without thinking about anything. Ken wouldn't listen to anything I said. This house is adapted for you. I moved here for you, you know? Got a problem with that? But you said you wanted to live here too, right? Huh? When did I say something like that? This house is where I lived before. Therefore, it is adapted so that I can live comfortably even with a wheelchair. When Ken first came here, he was impressed with the size of the house and the appliances, especially because I had invested a bit in electronics and furniture. I want to live here after we get married, he had said. Now he says, these handrails are in the way. It's like a nursing home. Why would you say something like that? Maybe I should have looked for other houses as well. It was only after we started living together that I finally realized. Ken decided to marry me because I had a house, a stable income, and domestic skills. Even during the mixer, he actively asked about my housekeeping skills. Marrying me, despite my disability, earned him praise as the ideal husband and a kind husband from those around us. But that was a misunderstanding. Despite my disability, I am independent, yet he is dependent on me for everything. As evidence, he spends most days out and about. Since the beginning of our relationship, he hasn't held a stable job and continues to live a part-time lifestyle. After getting married and realizing this reality, I have been brought to tears by my own pitiful situation. Yet, I chose not to leave him. I convinced myself that the fact he married me means he must have some affection for me, though I do not feel completely loved by him. Hey, can you give me some pocket money? I just gave you some, didn't I? I've already spent that. Ken, though unemployed, started demanding money from me. So, I consulted Ken's mother. Ken doesn't seem willing to work. What should I do? He's been working hard for a long time, so he's just tired. Let him rest a bit. My mother-in-law, who had always said, consult me about anything, ended up taking her son's side when I actually did. Indeed, Ken is her only son, so maybe it can't be helped, but I was not satisfied with that answer. My parents have already passed away, and I have no other family to rely on. Therefore, I was enveloped in despair. I thought about seeking advice from friends, but when I once mentioned a minor complaint, I was told that's a luxurious problem to have. Ken's outward appearance is that good. That evening, I ended up being scolded by Ken. What's this, huh? You've been talking unnecessary things to my mom. Are you talking about the job? Yes, that. Why would you say something that worries the elderly? I can't believe it. Then, you should just work so you won't cause any worry. When I argued back, Ken left the house. Whenever things don't go his way, he runs away. And then, he comes back late at night, drunk. It's me. I'm back. It's already morning. Keep it down because it bothers the neighbors. Shut up. Don't talk back to me. When he's drunk, he becomes uncontrollable. In times like this, all I can do is stay silent and endure. I might have reached my limit. That's what I started to think. But becoming lonely again is hard. I was wondering whether I should continue to endure or live alone for the rest of my life. When divorce started to seem like a realistic option, Ken suddenly made this suggestion. How about we live together with my parents? What? You mean move back to your parents' place? No, my parents will come here. Ken spoke as if living together was the natural course of action, and he had decided they would move into our house without consulting me. Indeed, my in-laws are getting older, and I understand the desire to be near them. But both are still healthy, and they have their own home, so it's unclear why they need to move here. Is it really necessary for them to live here? The house will be too small for 4 people, and I work from home, so it will cause problems. You always only think about yourself. I didn't realize you were such a cold person. I'm just saying it doesn't make sense to forcibly move here when there's a perfectly good house already available. This place is bigger, has the latest facilities, and is convenient, right? Plus, it's barrier-free. If my in-laws come here, I'll need to be considerate while working. Ken is hardly ever home, so it's not a problem for him. But my in-laws, being pensioners, will likely spend a lot of time at home. Additionally, it takes longer for me to do tasks like using the toilet or bathing compared to others, so living with restraints would be a significant mental and physical burden. Please give me some time to think. There's no time to wait. Hurry up. Ken said he couldn't wait, but without actually waiting, he brought his parents over for the weekend. It seemed that discussions about living together had been progressing in this household for some time. Hey, I've been thinking, what about you moving into a facility? Excuse me? I was shocked and couldn't believe what I heard. A facility as in for me to move into? Yeah, I think it's a good idea. It must be hard doing various things by yourself, right? In a facility, they'll take care of everything for you. Apparently, he was not just thinking about living together but also about kicking me out of the house. I'll come to check on you sometimes. I saw the reality clearly. If I don't confront this now, when will I? Honestly, what do you think of me? You're my wife, right? You're saying you'd send your wife you love to a facility? Hold on. When did I ever say I loved you? I felt my face getting hot. This man was just using me all along. I should have realized that long ago. The moment I realized it was time to put an end to everything, Ken uttered something unbelievable. Since this house will be lived in by my parents and me, you, an outsider, will be moving into a cheaper facility. What do you mean? When I looked to my in-laws for some form of rescue, they wore sarcastic smiles. Why are you laughing? Well, it's just funny. Sorry about that. They might have had their eyes on my house since even before we got married. Clearly, the situation was moving rapidly. I felt a strong need to get them out of the house. Please leave. What did you say? Please leave right now. Hey, why are you speaking to my parents like that? It seemed like I was seeing Ken's true colors. He was shouting at me with a face full of anger. If he cares so much about his parents, he should earn and build a house for them. Why try to take mine? Anger was boiling over in my head. Ken, calm down. She is just shocked by the sudden news. We just came for a preliminary look today. Yes, it's natural to check the house before moving in. It has become more livable than before, with more appliances. They came with the serious intention of taking my house. I tried to take a deep breath to calm down. As I inhaled oxygen, suddenly, a suspicion crossed my mind. How do they plan to make a living after I leave? My in-laws live on their pension, and Ken is employed on a non-regular basis. Currently, I pay for all the rent and daily expenses of this house. Who will pay the $2,000 living expenses? Do my in-laws think Ken earns enough for the rent and living expenses? Regardless of my concerns, my in-laws left the house contentedly. Ken also left with them. I'll be staying at my parents' house tonight. Wait, I want to talk. There's nothing to talk about. I, as the head of the household, have made my decision. My opinion won't change. I was left behind, stunned and bewildered, but I couldn't just sit still. Thinking I had to come up with a plan, I contacted an acquaintance who is a real estate agent. That night, Ken stayed at his parents' house and did not return. They were probably celebrating together. I quickly sorted my belongings into what I needed and what I didn't. When Ken returned home the next day and saw the organized luggage, he laughed. Oh, you've started sorting out your belongings already. Have you found a facility? Yes, that's right. My immediate response seemed to take Ken by surprise. Then, I handed Ken a signed divorce form. Here, sign this. I've already signed it, so just fill in your part quickly. Divorce papers? Why are we getting divorced? Since you're trying to kick me out of the house, there's no point in continuing this marriage, is there? Ken looked utterly taken aback. Apparently, he hadn't anticipated a divorce proposal from me. No, you can't manage without me, can you? Huh? I can't understand that reasoning. Who else is going to marry you, considering I'm your only option? If you divorce me, you'll likely be single for life. I can live on my own. But you wanted to get married, didn't you? Seeing Ken's perturbation, it became clear just how self-centered he was. He approached me thinking of me as a lonely single woman with a disability, someone vulnerable. I am independent, financially stable, and do not struggle with my lifestyle. Moreover, I can manage household tasks well since I spend a lot of time at home. For him, I was the ideal partner who could enable him to live freely without working. Without working, he would still have money coming in. Praised by others for marrying me, he felt secure thinking I had no other options and wouldn't leave him. But being presented the divorce papers immediately must have surprised him. Why? If we get divorced, you might end up single for the rest of your life. Actually, I feel much better about being single than continuing to live a married life with you. Do you really intend to spend the end of your life alone, in solitude? He asked me, almost sneering. Whether I feel lonely or not is not for you to decide. That's not something someone else should comment on. When I, who had been submissive, retaliated with a strong tone, he was clearly shaken. Ken's unease was evident, as if a pigeon had been hit by a pea shooter, caught off guard by the sudden change. I hadn't realized until now how feeble he was. Why had I been so considerate and obedient to him? It was hard for me to understand myself. The moment I decided on divorce, it felt like a heavy burden was lifted from my heart, as if I had gained a new freedom. Perhaps I had always been trapped by the concept of marriage, only able to see myself within its confines. And I realized that for the first time then. Anyway, there's no need to rush out of this house so suddenly. I said you should go to a facility because I didn't think you'd act so quickly, he said as if making excuses. Don't worry, I'll do as you wish. Now, sign the divorce papers, I responded calmly. I can't believe you'd find a new place to live so quickly. Wait, reconsider this. No need to worry. I've already settled the contract with the facility. What? Wait, isn't that too fast? He couldn't hide his panic. Watching his sudden change of attitude, I observed him with a detached view. Sometimes he scoffed. At times he was frantic, behaving erratically. As I gradually regained my composure, his presence began to feel increasingly bothersome. I've already arranged things with the facility. They're aware of my situation, so there's no need to worry. Hey, when did you make such preparations? I had my suspicions, but have you planned this ahead? Yes, actually, even before I met you. In truth, I had my eye on a specific facility in anticipation of my old age. It looked like a condo complex. When I was injured, feeling uncertain about the future, I devoured investment books while hospitalized. As a result, I decided to start investing in stocks and real estate. I used my income and inheritance from my parents to diversify my investments. The facility I had been eyeing was actually already purchased by me and had been operated as a rental property for a long time, generating rental income. I had never mentioned any of this to Ken. It was my secret source of wealth. We don't need a divorce. I get it. You can stay here. Let's live together with my parents. You really don't understand anything. As if I would ever agree to live together. He seemed completely oblivious. Even in the situation of offering a divorce, he still thought I had no other options but him. Unfortunately, I can't change what I've already decided. What are you talking about? Always pushing your own agenda. If you're going to say that, then do as you please. Don't blame me when you regret it later. Don't worry, I won't regret anything. Now, hurry up and sign. Ken fell silent for a moment, seemingly deep in thought. As time passed, I busied myself with packing. Then, I could hear Ken talking on the phone from a distance. Judging by his tone, he was likely consulting with his parents. The fact that he couldn't make his own decisions without relying on his parents filled me with contempt. Eventually, Ken returned to the room and suddenly approached me. Fine, we'll divorce. But once you sign, leave this house immediately. He signed the divorce papers reluctantly. He probably felt the loss of having me who had taken care of the household. However, maybe he thought that with his parents, he wouldn't need to worry about housework for the time being. Having acquired the house and all its furnishings and appliances, everything needed for living was already in place. He must have rationalized it that way. Well, I'm going to discuss our future life with my parents. You get ready to move out quickly. He tossed the divorce papers at me and left for his parents' house again. Understood? I'll do just that. My move was completed within a week. During that period, Ken did not show himself. A day after I finished moving, we met again when I was starting my new life in the new residence. Ken called me back to our previous home. What's this? The house is empty. Where did all the appliances go? I had them all picked up by a service. What do you mean? The day before, I had contacted a service to collect the furniture and appliances. Ken fell into panic, unable to hide his turmoil. Not just Ken, but his parents were also there. The appliances here were bought by me. I've been using most of them since before I was married. The only things that are yours are these. There were only 3 cardboard boxes left there. Only the clear storage boxes that were purchased after the marriage were left behind. Wait, we can't live like this. Even though we're divorced, there needs to be a division of assets. That's right, we can't live like this. What are you talking about? It's impossible to live here now anyway. What do you mean? The rent for this place is $2,000, you know? Ken and his parents were at a loss for words. Aside from his parents, I had clearly explained this to Ken when we got married. This house, it's not owned by you? That's right. I don't own it. This place was rented through a real estate agency run by an acquaintance, who gave me a slight discount on the rent. I had informed him that if I were to leave, the rent would naturally increase. Being a barrier-free property, there were several inquiries from people in similar situations as mine. That's why I recommended moving out as the wisest choice. Why didn't you say that sooner? What are we supposed to do now? That's not my concern. I clearly explained it to Ken. I wasn't told, we'll sue. Their reaction was as expected. From the outside, it might look as if I suddenly demanded a divorce, relinquished the dwelling, and took away the furniture and appliances. However, I was confident in my position. You're free to sue, but do you have the funds for that? Ken's expression darkened. It was clear this man didn't have the financial means to hire a lawyer. Even if he somehow managed to hire one, I had a decisive advantage. In front of Ken and his in-laws, I presented several photographs. What are these from, I wonder? The photos captured Ken indulging in gambling and nightlife. All of these were funded by me. I am prepared to fight with these. Ken, what is all this about? Everything was supposed to go smoothly. His parents were panicking abnormally. What was happening? Then Ken suddenly started to prostrate himself in apology. I'm sorry. Please cancel the divorce and let's start over. I can't do it without you. You're the one who drove me out. The divorce is already final. You're the one who said you didn't love me. So all I'm doing is leaving. Then his in-laws also started prostrating themselves beside Ken. We have nowhere to live now. This situation was completely unexpected. What do you mean? Our house is going to be seized. A shocking fact was revealed. Ken's family home was in a situation where they had to vacate in a few weeks. They were actually bankrupt. The enormous debt accumulated by the father-in-law kept snowballing, and with just their pensions, repayment was impossible. I understood then why Ken, who used to receive an allowance from his parents during his bachelor days, considered marriage as a way out of this predicament. The reason why my mother-in-law was particularly kind before the marriage now made sense. Apologies now change nothing. We are strangers. There's nothing I can or will do for you. You don't care if we end up homeless. That's your responsibility. Can't you at least give us the furniture and appliances? You're not struggling for money. Are you planning to sell them? No, haha. Their intention was clear. I firmly stated that I had no intention of giving away any furniture or appliances. Don't say things like that. Please, help us somehow. It's too late for apologies now. Solve your own problems. We're asking for help because we can't solve them. To their persistent pleas, I stated if they couldn't pay the rent, they had no choice but to vacate. The property was leased under my name, and it was easy to get them out by terminating the contract. Evicting them went smoother than expected. Even with a name change, it would be impossible for the unemployed Ken to continue living there. This was confirmed with the real estate agent. I can afford the rent. Eventually, the termination of this property lease was decided. There's no longer any business of mine there, and with the divorce already finalized, everything ended then. After managing to evict them, I locked the door and saw their astonishment. What are we supposed to do now? I'm already prepared to move into the facility. Goodbye. Don't joke. That facility, surely you'll have no freedom there and it'll be the worst. Try your best in that terrible environment. Ken couldn't resist throwing a sarcastic remark my way before finally leaving. I ignored his words and left Ken and his parents behind. However, Ken wouldn't just let it be and visited the facility I had moved into a few days later. What is this about? Ken was lost for words at the sight of the facility I had chosen. Talks of a terrible environment were greatly exaggerated. This place is top-notch. The facility I chose is a luxury one, worth about $700,000. I acquired the facility with the money I had saved over the years and the funds I had grown through investments. As a tenant just moved out, I was able to start living here. The temporary income from selling some appliances also helped, leaving me financially comfortable. The facility offers services worth its price, with doctors and helpers always on site. The layout is a spacious 3 rooms, creating a comfortable environment even for families. Hence, many couples and families also reside there. Daily assisted bathing services are provided, and there's a system in place to call for a helper whenever needed. Originally intended as a place to spend the final chapter of my life, I am satisfied with my choice now that I'm living here. I had no idea you were so wealthy. So what if I was? It's a nuisance for you to show up here. We're strangers now, so could you please leave? At this point, Ken suddenly started behaving in a coquettish manner towards me. It was truly unpleasant. Can't you let me live here, just me? What are you saying? That's absolutely impossible. We're divorced. Accept the reality. But let's remarry. Actually, I'm living in an internet cafe now. Pitiful, isn't it? Without an address, I can't find a job. Such a self-serving man. Always putting his own convenience first. It seems he quickly abandoned his parents as well. He's utterly self-centered. Why don't you take a look in the mirror? You're looking quite miserable right now. What? Even as an adult, you're still taking money from your parents, living off your marriage like a parasite. And now you're practically a beggar without a home? Pathetic. Ken's face rapidly turned red. Aren't you embarrassed to be begging your ex-wife like this? Look, everyone's watching. Residents on the balcony were looking our way. In fact, I had asked for this in advance in case my ex-husband comes visiting. For everyone to witness his pitiful state. I had anticipated that Ken would eventually come to me, either to console me, believing I'd be in a miserable state in the facility, or to seek assistance. The community was very supportive, intentionally giving Ken sympathetic looks. Their acting was so realistic and moving, almost deserving of an applause. Bathed in the gaze of onlookers, Ken seemed to realize how dishonorable his actions were. I won't ask anymore. Leaving those words behind with a pale face, he left. This should prevent him from coming again. Later, I ran into my mother-in-law who was working as a cashier at a supermarket. It appears my father-in-law was doing cleaning work, and my mother-in-law was on register duty. Upon seeing me, my mother-in-law hurriedly hid her face and avoided me. She was being scolded by a younger female employee for her behavior. I heard Ken was introduced to a job by someone he met at the internet cafe, working in a tough environment for a very low wage. As for me, I frequently host home parties, enjoying my time with people in the facility. I've made friends with other wheelchair users and with such a community. I wish I had moved here sooner. I'm living a comfortable and happy life. After a long time, I've also been able to devote time to rehabilitation. Currently, I'm working towards being able to walk a bit on my own feet. I'm spending my days satisfied with both my work and personal life.